Hello Guardians! Today I'm going to show you how to make a build in Destiny 2. This is at least my process on how to make a build, so yeah, hope you enjoy. If I'm being honest, I have the hardest time making builds with Titan. Titan I can just never quite get right, so I think that'll probably be the best way for me to demonstrate how to make a build and how to tweak the build as well. My location of choice is the Altars of Sorrows on the moon. It has perfect ad density. It can test your boss melt capabilities. It can test, ad clear. And it's pretty forgiving. You'll either have people just around you to revive you if needed, or, just 3 seconds, not that long. Anyways, how to actually start with the build craft. Now, typically for this, you want to get a good launching off point. Actually, we'll go to my character. As you can see here, I have a few builds, each of them saved with you have an exotic armor piece, an exotic weapon to supplement. That's basically my go-to on how I'd make a build. I start by asking myself, what do I want to do? Now if we're just gonna go, completely off rip, you could find I think we're gonna load in, so let's wait for that to happen first. This is the Altars of Sorrow. For anybody's unfamiliar, you fight through 5 or 6 waves of ads and bosses, but it's not too important. It's not too intense, I should say. In terms of the build, where do we start? I'd say it's important to start again with what you want to do. Now, some items and exotics are easier to build around than others, some not so much. I'm going to try to go for an exotic I really haven't used, preferably a PvE one, because this is a PvE build. If you are a PvP just legend, this is not for you. I'm nowhere good at PvP. I heard it was pretty good. Let's see how we do. So this is how I start. Actually, let me check my vault, make sure I don't already have it on me somewhere. I do. Okay. Let's start completely fresh. So, if we look at this exotic, it's not good stats. But if we equip it, what does it say? Gain an additional Frenzy Blade charge. Frenzy Blade and Flechette Storm briefly increase their damage with each strike. Pulses from your Banner of War return melee energy based on the number of allies healed. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty cut and dry build. Now, this example, I will do a Darkness subclass, but later, for simplicity, I may not do one. Zero these out, just so we can get a true baseline. There's only one super here, not important. Flechette Storm, okay. Banner of War, those are the 2 perks listed here. Frenzy Blade's the melee, we'll get to that in a second. But you have Banner of War, and you have Flechette Storm. So going back to our subclass. Now, since this is Frenzy Blade, what we're going to be using, and Banner of War, and both Banner of War and Flechette Storm are a strongly melee dominant build, we're going to focus on getting our melee back and, doing some damage with it. Barricade doesn't matter. Let's start here. So typically once I get to this area, I try to look through and see what fragments do I need. And while I think about that in my head, let's go over grenades. You don't really want to tangle grenade. Threadlings, whatever they're called. Grapple's cool. Shackles, grenade's cool. We'll go with grapple because it's melee based. So defeating targets with tangle grants melee energy. Grenades, finishers. Woven mail is probably good because we're not using this one here into the fray. We may be creating tangles, maybe not, but we're not going to be able to get the woven mail off the rip. So instead, I'll equip it here. What else do we have? Not suspending. Not really weapon based. Final blows, create a tangle. Strand weapons get unraveling rounds. Strand weapons get unraveling rounds based on our melees. That's probably what we want to have. Not dealing with threadlings. Not doing precision damage. Not using our super too much. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. Could be helpful. Let's equip it for now. Oh, this is the last one. This is never a bad one. Let's just go back over them in case I missed something. Okay. So this is going to be my subclass loadout. Since we're using Wishful Ignorance, since we'll be using Wishful Ignorance, it's probably important to have Flechette Storm and Banner of War. These are decently melee focused, and if it doesn't work out, we can get into tweaks later, but I think this is a good starting off point. Now, again, this is a melee based build, so it's possible you may not have some super spiky armor like this. I'm using Grenade mod to get 14 instead of 4, so this is naturally a good armor piece, but if you don't have that, that's okay. I can get into that in a second. Let's check my armor. This is just better. Should probably delete that at some point. Okay, so we have a good helmet piece. I'm trying to go for 100 resilience and 100 strength. This is to, stay alive as a Titan. It's pretty useful. And just to get as much melee as possible. Melee's the main goal, but, depending on if you're taking this into harder level activities, you may or may not want more resilience. I always like having it, and I think my armor tends to be high resilience, as you can see, so we'll go for that. Melee. We'll go with this one. Go for our boots. Melee. Pretty solid. And here we go. It's probably best to start from the top down when dealing with your armor. So, start with the helmet. This is, again, a melee build, so while discipline is nice, it's not exactly what we're going for. Again, melee build, so hands-on is probably what you want to have. If you don't know where that is, it's right here. You have 3 things that give you super. You have class ability, grenades, and then melee. Since it's melee build, go with melee, and, since this is a strand melee build, and I'll probably be using some amount of strand weapons, we'll go with Harmonic Siphon. Now, typically when I'm making a build with an exotic, I like to level up my exotic armor piece to 9. Not all builds I use, I don't always keep them around forever, but it's nice to have. Now, since we already have double 100s here and here, I'll go ahead and add grenade, because, grenades are really nice to have. I personally think Orbs of Power is really good, especially if you think about it. Melee final blows create Orbs of Power, and if we look, I believe it's this one. Picking up an Orb of Power, grants Woven Mail, so this is going to be our main source of Orbs of Power, aside from the helmet mod, which we have here, Strand Siphon, which I'll change these out, but we may or may not be using a bunch of strand, who knows. Going back to our armor piece, since I do only use 9, you don't really get a lot of options, but I do think getting your, where is it? Should be this one. Cause you damage with powered melee attack, reduce your grenade cooldown. We'll be getting a lot of melees off, so this will be nice to have. Since this isn't a grenade focus build, I'm not too worried about grenade kickstart or Fonta focus. Now, melee kickstart is a good idea. And now that I mention it, I'm actually going to swap it in, just like that. That's one thing about build crafting, it doesn't have to be rigid. Your builds will change on the fly, and that's something I really hope to show you in a second once I get this build sorted. Next, moving on to our chest piece. As a Titan, I keep this about the same. No, not even as a Titan. Across all characters, I keep this the same. I keep a nice 3 mod or 4 mod depending on what I need. Then I have charged up for more armor charge, and then emergency reinforcement because I kind of like to, I like to get in there. I like to get into the fight. I like to use my fist. If I'm going to be up close and personal, I need some resistance. So this is good. Harmonic reserves, cool, I guess. Ideally, if I had the space and I didn't need that, for example, I'd want something like, Concussive Dampener. I feel like that's a general safe pick. You can also have melee damage resistance, which we could try that as well. There's no stats over here that can level up with just 1 slot. I do have an Artifice piece of armor, so I might be able to get this to 50. If you don't have Artifice armor, that's perfectly fine. You don't need it. We'll keep that as our chest piece for now. My main goal is just to keep resilience and strength. Moving on to our legs. Legs I typically keep the same, except for this. Now, my main goal for legs is stacks on stacks always helpful, but you typically want some type of health. I've always liked better already for immediate health regeneration, but a lot of people have been using this. I haven't really noticed a difference, so I'm going to use this. Now, having a nice 3 mod and then stacks on stacks doesn't really lend itself well. Hold on. Whenever you're making your build, make sure to stay in a safe spot like this. Going back to our legs. Now, I don't really have a lot of space for too much else right now. So, Orbs of Restoration, not a bad idea. Gets ability energy, period. This would be better, but for what I'm rocking, I really do like having stacks on stacks. So for what I'm rocking, these two will work fine. But typically, I like to keep at least one health mod, and if possible, one ability focus mod, but this one works too. If not, we can change it. Okay. So I can't quite get that, I can't quite get to 50 discipline. That's okay. But we do have our 100 resilience, which is nice. Now, typically I use these two to fill up whatever stats I can't get. So, just for demonstration purposes, look at what we have left. I'm not really planning on using my class ability. There's no need. I also don't have a use for time dilation. If we go back to my mods, none of them are blue. They're all yellow. Which a key difference here is the yellow orbit power mods, they'll become active when something happens. If you take a lot of damage, if you use your melee, if you use your grenade, then you'll get that health back, that shield, you'll get that melee, that grenade. That's when that kicks in. These blue mods, on the other hand, what they do is they'll activate when you have armor charge. So when you pick up an orb, or however you get armor charge, that's when this will kick in. Now, I'm already at 100 resilience, so I don't have a need for Font of Endurance. I don't need it. So, since my armor charge isn't going down on a timer, I have no need for time dilation. Instead, I'll put that here. And what else could we use? Typically, I don't like these kickstart mods. I'm just not a fan of them personally, but they don't hurt. So, I'm not performing finishers. That's another thing. Don't put on mods just to fill up space. I'm never going to perform a finisher, or if I do, it's going to be super rare, so I don't need it. Instead, what I'll do is I will put on 2 melee mods. It's a melee focused build, so we'll do 2 melee mods. That is going to be our mods. I think you can... There we go. You can view the mods here. And there you go. That's how to make the, armor focus build. Bro's having fun. Next, I'm going to go over my artifact real quick. This season is strand focused, so, we'll try to build into that. You typically want one of each. That's good. You want unstoppable, overload, anti-barrier. I'll probably be using these weapons, so we'll keep them there. Now, for the rest, we'll just spec into anything strand related, or anything that we may be using. So, I'll probably be using machine gun. If not, I can change it, but since I may use it, we'll get this one as well. Elemental Siphon, stuff matching my super helps. We'll get that. This one's cool. This one's nice. Just in case I somehow do a finisher, we'll get that. Oh. Thought there was another strand one. Here we go. Yep, 2 shreds. So I just picked the ones that are green flavored. All of these relate to strand to some degree. Next, I'll go over my weapons. I want something also green flavored, especially with Strand Siphon. Now, because this is a melee focus build, I would like to do something that, feeds me my melee back. Or kind of works with this extra damage. I want something quick. I want some burst damage. So to get that burst damage or to get my melee back, I'm thinking of two options right off the rip. Let's swap over to Dim. Now, looking at Dim, there are a lot of choices you could have, but two ones stand out immediately. You have Monte Carlo, which kills generate melee energy, or can sometimes refund it entirely. That's always a good one. And for that burst damage, I kind of like Parasite. It may fit, it may not. That's up to you though. Now, I don't want a sword. Grenade launchers are okay, but I'm looking for something quick, some burst damage. I'm going to be killing bosses, and I'm going to be killing ads. So something in between is nice. Just for demonstration purposes and to really get that loop of melee builds, we'll go with Monte Carlo. That's already in our inventory. Now for a special weapon, again, I'm looking for something kind of high damage, get some burst damage off. And seeing it here, since this is an ad dense environment, we'll go with Psychopomp. It's a pretty good roll. It should help me clear out a lot of ads. And finally for our heavy, I'm not sure. Rocket launchers are always good. Ooh, what's this one? Okay, we'll try out this one. It's good for burst damage, and if I'm not feeling that one, I should have a Strand LMG in here somewhere. It's non-fused, but it does have hatchling and triple tap, which is nice, so we'll use that. Swap our weapons over. There it is. Now again, we do have the Strand Siphon, which is always nice. But seeing as I'm going to be using Monte Carlo, I can change this over to Kinetic Siphon, which may be more useful. So we have Kinetic Arc just for the area denial, quite literally in its name, area denial frame, and we have a machine gun. Now for builds where it's really ability focused like this one, your weapons don't matter as much, but you want exotics that will complement each other. This gives me melee ability, and this one amps my melee ability, so they're going to be pretty useful for each other. Now, the last thing you may have noticed, my Titan looks kind of atrocious. Let's fix that. You see here, it's a whole hodgepodge of stuff. Wow, I did not know he had wings sticking out like that. Drip is important in Destiny 2. End of story. So let's just go for something. The vibe I'm getting from the armor piece, you want to try to build with the armor piece if you can, but if not, so be it. But at the very least, start with a shader. At the very least, start with a shader. Now this looks fine. I kind of liked the other one I had earlier. It's not going to win any awards, but you know, this isn't a fashion video, this is a build video, so we'll just go with this for now. At the very least, it's matching. Oh, failed the auto, sorry. Well, that's why we're here. Now, we're actually going to demonstrate the build and see what we can do. Weapons. Now again, this is not a weapon focused build, but you know, we'll just gun this guy down first. Get a good contrast of, you know, basic gameplay. And then let's see what we can do with our build. I'd say we took down a good chunk of his health. It's rather subpar gameplay. But, you know, took down a good chunk of his health. Let's see what else we can do. As you can see, my Monte Carlo is refilling my melee. So at the very least, you know, despite me wasting my super, we know that Monte Carlo is very helpful for this build, seeing as we, you know, we have our melees back. Now that could be attributed to other stuff I wasn't paying attention to, but it's there. Now while this can be used for boss damage, I think there's better uses of Flechette Storm for boss damage, so I'm going to avoid that and instead focus on the ads for now. Which, if I really want to focus on boss damage, I got these bad boys right here. Actually, let's swap over to that one. That's more interesting. Again, you change on the fly. I go to Altars of Sorrow just for the experimentation of it all, not necessarily for the finished product. Somebody stole my tangle, that's fine. Here I may get a little quiet based on my level of focus, but if nothing else, right now we have items that flow together. We have our melee, which feeds into our grenade, which, I'm not using. It's not too important. Same with our class ability, but if we need them, they're there, which is very helpful to have. Looks like our hands-on mod, I believe. Yes, hands-on is coming in very nicely. Somebody beat me to the punch. Alright. Now, from my time on Altars of Sorrow, which is an embarrassingly long time on Altars of Sorrow, I know about where the spawns are. So, I wait here. There should be ads coming in soon. Do a little spawn camping if we can. No such luck. Now for this build, I don't recommend doing it like that. Just because, it kind of burns through your abilities unnecessarily. You're not going to be able to kill the boss 9 times out of 10 with just your melee. Choose some others available. We got all of our melee energy back, which I think that's just from Supercast. Let's see, where's that? There he is. Just because of the nature of the ads, they're kind of squishy. I'm not getting a lot of energy back from my melees, but I'm getting enough. As you can see, I'm already at half again. And just staying in the fight gives me that melee energy back. Not melee energy. Being in the fight gives me that super energy back. I used it this round, and by the middle, if not the beginning, of this next round or wave, we should be good. This one's always tricky. I believe it spawns over here. One of these two. Probably that one. Alright, got a super back up from hands-on. I think by the end of this, I should have all my melee back. Yep, there it is. It's a nice little bonus. Ooh, chunked. Okay, that's what we like to see. I didn't notice it, but there's our exotic armor buff on the side. So, you can learn about your build as you're doing the build. I didn't look too closely, it would seem, so I found out that, getting melee kills increases my melee damage. Let's see. This is what our grapple's for. Very helpful. Yep, there's the buff on our side. Wish Dragon Talons was there for just a second. Also, fun fact about the sword: light, heavy will one-shot the wizards if you get a nice hit on them the first time. Except for that wizard that spawns over there. If you play altars, you know what I'm talking about. They're kind of hard to hit. Otherwise, that's a real good trick to knock them out quickly. Here we go. Light, heavy. If you don't miss, that is. There we go. Now, due to the nature of this build and giving my melees back after super cast, probably would have been good to just go in and use my melees, then pop super, but that's okay. Got Wish Dragon Talons, and he's melted. So, you know, it takes a little bit of prep, but it cycles back eventually. Now, one thing I am... Oop, boss is up there. Let's see. Alright, well, he handled it for us, but I think we could have gotten with a melee if we had enough time. Okay, quick change. I'm noticing I'm not using Monte Carlo a lot. It's good as a starter weapon, but, you know, ideally you want to have your abilities feed into themselves. I haven't used my class ability, but it would give me my melee back. But my super's doing a pretty good job due to the frequency that I get it due to hands-on. You want your abilities to cycle. Melee gives me super, super gives me melee, and if I'm in a pinch, class ability would give it instead. So Monte Carlo's not too helpful here. What I'll instead do is I'll swap to this one. Actually, this one. Arc's pretty good this season, and Pugilist. Again, you want your weapons to feed into your abilities. What Pugilist does is final blows generate improved melee energy. Melee damage improves his weapon's handling. So this feeds into my melees. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of double primaries. So what I'll do is I'll swap over to Dim. And I'll get... Is it the call? Yes, the call. Dim's playing nice today. Demolitionist, Golden Tricorn. So, you know, bonus damage... Grenader melee final blows increase its damage, so it kind of syncs with my abilities. My abilities feed my weapons feed my abilities. That's what you want. Ideally, you'd want to have Pugilist on this too or something similar, but I'm too lazy to look for it right now. Now, one last thing. I want to feed into that boss melt just a little bit more, and I tend to be getting a lot of kills before I do so, so we're going to swap to Parasite. It's not... You know, it doesn't match everything else. The only thing we have is the call, and until we get this brick, we didn't have any ammo for it. But it's still useful. Now, our weapons don't match damage-wise. You know, this is an arc weapon, but they feed in nicely. This will give me some extra ad clear that I may need. So, you know, if I don't have my melee up like I do now, I'm going to pretend I don't have my super up. This is some good ad clear to have. Yep, that's that wizard I was talking about. Odds are I'm going to struggle to get him, but we're going to try. Got our Woven Mail thanks to that fragment, I believe. Our health is staying topped off due to our aspects. Got him. I don't think I swapped. I forget where it is, but I don't think I swapped it. So I'll do that real quick. Again, we build on the fly. So instead of kinetic siphon, let's just go back to harmonic so we get our strand off. about to go into a bunch of enemies, you can slam this tangle down. Or, I think the way it works is actually getting an orb of power. If we don't have one, that's okay. So instead, I would just go ahead and chunk this boss down. Simple as that. And that's what we want our parasite for. It's going to be a while before I need to chunk down a boss again. So, in the meantime, we'll just use our parasite to chunk down the stuff. I don't think I covered it explicitly. Oh, boss is dead. That's fine. There's the boss. Hiding like a coward, I see. He's got Worms Type 20 waiting for him. Gone. Yep, that's why we like Parasite. So I didn't cover it explicitly, but if we go into this one, not Fleshhead Storm, Banner of War, let's see, where is it? Yes, there it is. Defeating your target with a melee attack, finisher, or sword to raise a Banner of War that pulses with energy. This Banner of War gives me healing and increased melee damage, which also feeds into Wishful Ignorance. Now, that was likely done on purpose by the devs, but this is also a good example of how your aspects can feed into your exotics. Just for demonstration purposes. Swap phases. There we go. Now, as you can see, I don't have my super up. I'm not going to waste it on this guy. I don't have my super up, nor do I have many melees, if any. Again, we're going to ignore my super since I didn't have it. Worm's Hunger. Didn't work. Worm's Hunger. Another benefit of this build. Now I do have my melee. It was minuscule, but enough. Not enough to matter since I missed. And that's why we want to have something big like that to chunk the boss down. So it's all about options. If I'm struggling on my ag clear department, that's what this weapon is for, with its full shot. And if I'm struggling on my damage department, that's what this bad boy is for, if you can hit your shots. Swap weapons before I embarrass myself even more. There we go. Just gonna go in here. Good. Just finish him off real quick. There we go. Typically, I just leave that one alone, especially since teammates got it. Quite get it, that's fine. Fleshhead Storm chunking him. Parasite to finish. We have good boss damage. And if not, oh, you know, we have teammates to help us. And in terms of ad clear, again, we have our little pistol buddy here. Now, might be a good time to mention, I'm not really using my strand weapons a lot. If I do use them, it's briefly. That would be a perfect time to switch to Arc Siphon. I like having my super more than I do Orbs of Power, especially with my melee generating Orbs of Power, so I'm not going to do that. Typically, the way I do my builds is I'll play through an entire round of Altars of Sorrow using the build, making tweaks on the fly as I go. I made some armor tweaks, I made some weapon tweaks. I'd like to think my aspects, fragments, abilities, they're all good. Can't change my melee, can't change my super. Not using my barricade. I like this jump. And grapple is pretty helpful just for mobility purposes. So I think everything here is fine. If something wasn't though, like, say I'm using an arc weapon in the build, but nothing's building into it here, I'd probably change that over. Same thing here. If there's a part of my build I'm not using, I'll swap it over. Depends on what I need. But I think this is the final build. I already have a few examples of said build here with different abilities, which this is a good case. If I wanted to make a quick adjustment, I can instead swap over, what is this, Syntheseps? Yeah, I could swap over Syntheseps if needed. Oh wow, that bumps up my stats quite a lot. No, this could be helpful, but since we started with Wishful Ignorance and it seemed to do pretty good, especially with boss damage, which, they kind of play the same role, but this one more so, especially with the extra melee charge. We'll keep this one for now. And I think that's everything I have to cover. We covered mods, covered subclasses, got our weapons, the artifacts and afterthought. It's very seasonal dependent. This whole build seasonal dependent, seeing that Armor 3.0 is gonna, kind of shake things up, but overall, get rid of this. Overall, that's how you make a build. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them in the comments. I'm no expert. Let's learn together. And thank you for watching. Till next time.